I'm Ryan Durbin from RD Ceramics, and I'm located in Southgate, Kentucky.
And I'm Becca Otis from Five Lines Pottery in Monroe, Washington. And welcome to Wheel Talk. Alrighty.
All right, so we're live.
Hello.
Hi there. How's it going? Your day was a lot more exciting than mine, so
Yeah.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah,
that
you
way
go
you
first,
can bookend it. All
How
right,
was your day, Ryan?
It was good. It was kind of slow. This is my first day back. We were on a weekend vacation in St. Augustine, Florida for Friday through Monday. So I just got back last night before pottery class, and yeah, today's just kind of first day back at work, and we're actually recording this earlier than normal. Normally I'd be done with my pottery in the studio for the night, but we're just getting going, so I'll head to the studio after this. So
I wonder if this
nice
will
to get
help
back
you
in there.
be motivated, because sometimes when I'm done with the podcast, I get motivated and then I go work.
Oh, really? Well, yeah, you always get done at like 8 o'clock or something like that, so you get a nice burst of time before your night's over.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll find out. How was your day today?
Oh, right. My day. We'll start with my weekend. My weekend was interesting. So I actually had a very good day, and the reason is because they found my van that was stolen on Sunday. Well, we don't know when it was stolen because I don't see the van every day because it's my work van. I'm not in Leavenworth anymore, so I didn't really need it. My friends had used it on Tuesday and parked it in the alley behind my office, and then, which is not where my shop is. And then I went out there and I drove back there on Sunday, and I was like, where's my van? And it was like Sunday at or Monday, I suppose, at 1 a.m. And so it turns out somebody took it. And that was a super bummer. And of course,
Man.
me and my...
You did the police report and all that stuff.
Yeah, I called the police. And at first I was like, did I lend it to somebody? I don't remember giving it to anybody. And so then yesterday I shared it on Facebook at 1 a.m. And it got I think it was shared 90 times.
Holy crap.
Or 100 times. That's how we should start advertising our businesses. And
yeah.
I'll look at how many times it was shared. And then let's see, and then it was 106 shares.
Jeez.
Yeah.
And that's just on Facebook.
That's just on Facebook, and then I did it on Instagram too. And then this morning there was so ironically the cop that took my statement drives this back road from Snohomish to Monroe every day to get to work, and he was driving it and he was like, oh hey, there's the van.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
just on the side of the road at a boat launch. And so he actually ended up coming and picking me up and then took me to where it was, and they were like, do you know who this is? Because they had the picture. There was a guy sleeping in it.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Oh, because it's decked out or whatever,
Yeah.
where you can sleep in it because it was the one you used at Leavenworth.
Well, it was empty. It was basically empty. So, and I had my sleeping cushions in there, and which that was what Andrew was really bummed about, because he was like, those cushions were so expensive.
Oh.
And because I got them for a good deal because I knew the vendor, but it would have been $400 in these really nice cushions. And anyway, so they show me the picture and I'm like, yes, I know who that is.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, I should say that Ryan hasn't heard this story yet.
Yeah.
So I was like,
oh gosh.
I was like, yeah, isn't that? And I was like, when you are so hoping it's not somebody and it is somebody, you're like, I looked at his picture and I was like, no, it can't be,
Mm-hmm.
And and
So it's not somebody that you see frequently. It's someone
right.
that you remember from like a past experience with them, and then
Well, we live in a pretty small town, so
okay,
it's an acquaintance, as you will. And
gotcha.
well, not like tiny, tiny, but anyway. So it was an acquaintance, and then we kind of like. It was funny because I said that, and the cops like, "Oh, the plot thickens." And
Because did he stop there and like? I guess he found out who it was, and he already did his work before coming and getting you. Like he got the guy out of it, and
no, but he
took care
did a
of that
lot of
part
work while I was there, like on his computer, like searching things and like,
Oh,
cause I was like, what did he? Oh, so they said, "Have you ever seen him?" And I was like, "Yes." And then they said, "And you never let him use your van?" I was like, "No." And he said that he had borrowed it from somebody, and then and so he didn't. And they said that that's usually a common story, like, "Oh, I borrowed it from a friend." And they had a key that was a Dodge Ram key, but it wasn't my key, and it fit in the ignition.
oh shit.
So, there was no, but I mean, that's kind of a blessing too, because there was no damage to the
Okay.
ignition, which can
Yeah, I was
happen.
gonna ask you if there was a bunch of wires out and
No,
all that
and
stuff.
also the car, so I have an RV battery switch, and I turn it usually, but I usually just leave it in the van, and I should have taken it, and then they would have been able to steal it. But, it, so they had to have opened up the hood, found the switch, turned the switch, and like known what it was. And
Hmm.
then, but so anyway, now I go and they're like, "Well, there's a bunch of stuff in there that's not like," he's like, "You can see what's in there." And
Yeah.
there's like, there's like a snowboard, a metal detector, some laundry detergent, some like pants,
Wow.
and so I think that he just needed a place to go, you know, and
Yeah.
that was his solution. I don't know for sure, so um, but
You
uh,
got it back.
I got it back. Everything's fine.
Do they like clean it out and stuff, or
That's
get rid of
your
it, or
that's
they're just like, all right, it's all yours, and you've got everything that's in it?
right. And I talked
Do
to
they ask you to press charges and stuff too?
I don't know for sure if I will.
Okay.
They did take him
Hmm.
in, so I haven't decided yet what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Um, they did take him in, and and somebody advised me not to go through the van until I have proper attire because
Oh, like there could be like a
there's a
needle or
history of
something that.
yeah, of drugs and stuff. So I haven't gone through it yet. So
Okay.
yeah. So hopefully
What
it's
an interesting day and weekend. At least you
so
found it,
interesting.
or somebody found it.
I also got a high roller this weekend too. It was like a high and then a low and then a high and then a low.
High roller, like you sold like 100 pieces or something to somebody.
No, a high roller slab roller.
Oh, slab roller.
The
I thought you meant somebody with big bucks just came in and gave you a bunch of money.
no, the original high roller,
Oh, that's great.
which
Okay.
I never associated with until now, which I absolutely love. I'm gonna have to start saying that. Shoot, man. Oh,
All right.
also, I wanted to say that because this was like, a person in town, um I think that I just kind of had like a realization this week or that today that like, I already knew this kind of, but when uh you have a kid that is full grown, because this guy's in his like 30s. I mean, that just is so hard on parents, and like, I think that like a mom or a dad always thinks that it's their fault that their kid is like in drugs or did something bad. And it's like, I just think that's such a bummer. And it must be, my heart goes out to all the parents that are dealing with kids with drug issues and like, you know, also with mental issues, because man, that's tough. I just kind of like got a little bit of a firsthand glimpse of it, you know, today. And
right. Did you actually meet the guy?
I've met him, but not.
Well, did you meet him like when all this happened?
They took him away. Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. It just drugs suck. That's it. That is all.
Right. All right.
Cool.
So what are we talking about today?
Oh, yeah. So, Ryan. Oh, so somebody messaged me. Oh, great. Let's see if I can find it.
I can find it.
It had so many messages. Did I text it to you?
I've got it. Okay,
somebody messaged me on the Instawebs.
Yeah, Becca got something on Instagram.
Oh, here it is.
That, yeah, we can read it. It said, I had a question. Could you and Ryan maybe share...
It's from Hill City Ceramics.
Hill City Ceramics, yes. Could you and Ryan maybe share how you guys mix your own glazes? Not like, don't give me your recipes or combos, but maybe share some resources that helped you guys become confident glaze mixers. If it's not enough material to go on about in a podcast, don't worry, I'll keep trucking on, but it would be so cool just to hear how you went through that process.
I'm excited for this, honestly.
Yeah, I think that's part of a process that people just get really scared about, that I feel like it's overrated a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't be that scared.
So true.
You don't have to be a mad chemist or whatever. Mm-mm. You could be like a mad chemist. You
I almost failed chemistry.
Totally hands off. You could be like, I know how to follow a cooking recipe.
Right.
So I know how to follow this. Like, it's really just following steps.
Yeah. And you know what? Some of the biggest mistakes that we've had in my studio have become some of the best glazes, honestly.
Yeah, as long as you document like what you're doing,
which I'm terrible at,
to the best of your ability. If you want to like keep track of the results, then I think that's what's important.
Yeah,
as you're learning for sure. Yeah, as we've gone on, we've probably got a little more lax with our documentation and
I'm sure
test tiles and all that kind of thing. So
yeah. Okay, so let's talk about it. Let's talk about glaze, baby. Let's talk about chemistry. I've been waiting for that my whole life. Okay, so here, I'll start with mine. I don't know if a ton of you people know, but when I switched over, I was working in a community studio, kind of, where Production Potter opened up his studio, and there's like 70 students, like a ton of students. And we had like a tiny mini glaze workshop class that I barely listened through because I have the brain capacity of a squirrel. And but then also I'd have a little bit of background in college. And what I did was, the first thing that I did was I got John Britt's glaze chemistry book, the
Master and Cone Sixes, or mid-range guide to mid-range,
guide to mid-range. It's like the most famous glaze book that you can find, and I think. But
I feel like that only came out like maybe 6 years ago or something like that, like 5 years ago. Maybe
so it was pretty new when I got it, apparently. Yeah. So because I got it it was at least in 2014. I want to say even 2013. So, mastering Cone 6 glazes. Sorry, I lost Ryan there for a second.
I think.
Okay, and I went home and I looked up all these glazes in this book that I wanted to make. Okay, like all of them.
How'd you look them up? Did you just look at the pictures and look at the test tiles? Because it's organized by color. Like, we don't have to be fancy about this. Like, we look at the colors and we're like, I need a blue or I need a green.
And I was like, oh, I'm going to do that. And so then it has the recipes on there, and I got a notebook. By the way, I still have this notebook, and it is my glaze test notebook. And then I have a glaze recipe notebook. So the glaze test notebook, and I wrote down all the ingredients. I had no idea that kaolin was EPK. This was like back in the day when I didn't realize that, different things were the exact same thing. And I wrote it all down, and I wrote out the measurements, and then I added them all up, all the measurements up that I wanted. So like I wrote down every single glaze, and then I added up all the measurements of every single ingredient, and then I went to the store, the glaze store or clay store, and I went in and I got the tester the tester amounts of each ingredient that I needed. And
which was, what did you have to get at least like half a pound?
Yeah,
of
you
every
usually have to get
ingredient
half a pound or a quarter pound or something like that, depending on the product. And so, and I made sure that, some of the recipes called for a lot of ingredients, so I made sure to add up everything so that I didn't get too little of some of them. And I made sure to get a variety of glazes too. Actually, ironically, I never found a good white in John Britt's book. The white that I use is straight out of the internet. And I can't remember.
Straight out of the
internet. I can't remember where I got it, but it's a fabulous white, and I've never had an issue with it. Anyway, so I looked up all the things, and then I went, and then I just literally spooned out used a spoon to measure out all of these recipes on a triple bean calculator. If you don't have a triple bean, just get a really, really good food calculator, or not, or
like a digital food
you said measurer. Calculator. I said calculator. Scale? I didn't mean that. Hey, you know what?
You're like, I got my van stolen, okay?
Well, also, you thought, what did I say? I said I was gonna. My favorite animal is like a porcupine or something, and you thought it was Puma. Anyway, we say stupid things. So
versus a warthog.
A warthog. Anyway, so then I measured them all out, and then I did get a tutorial on how to mix a little tiny tester glaze batch. But essentially, all you got to do is dump a little water in there and mix it up. And people sieve it out, but I don't. I should.
So when you took your list to the store, how did you know how many grams or how
many
pounds or whatever you should? No. How did you know how much was enough for a test?
I added it.
I know, but did you just add it to 100 and you just did 100 grams? Because it's all percentages.
Yeah.
Just for people,
okay. That's a good point.
What's a good guesstimate?
Well, it's not
with?
Percentages. Every single test glaze in the John Britt book is out of 100.
Well, yeah. I'm saying that's a percentage. How did you know how much was enough to test with?
Because I only did 100 grams.
That's it? Okay.
Yeah, so I do tests in 100 grams. I do full batches in 10,000 grams. So.
Right.
And that's about a 5-gallon bucket. So, yeah.
Yeah, 100 grams is going to give you maybe 4 ounces or something like that.
Yeah, it's tiny. Tiny. And
it's nothing, so.
Yeah, like not even enough to like dump back into the big glaze bucket that you get. And also, I've always kind of had this in my mind where like the test always comes out just a smidge different than the real glaze because it's so tiny. Like who can find 0.02% of bentonite? Right. But so yeah, and so I did that. I weighed them all out and I put them in little plastic bags and labeled them, and then I mixed them up with water later. And then I put them in a tiny pinch pot, like a little bowl. And I didn't glaze the outside. I only glaze the inside when I do tests. And
oh, that's good.
Yeah, I do it in a small bowl, and I've always been taught just to glaze the inside. So if it drips, then you know that it drips. And so, and if it gets ruined, it only ruins your little tiny pot. So, put them in my kiln and fired it up, and then one of them completely dunted through the whole thing. It just fell apart. So I was like, well, that's out. And then a few other ones worked. And the one that happened to work was just a base. And then I ended up adding in a stain. And
what's a base?
like, okay, so a base is essentially, it would be like if you're making sugar cookies and you have a base for sugar cookies, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to use the sugar cookie recipe and then add cinnamon. And then you have snickerdoodles, and then you're like, I don't know if this actually works like this, but because I don't bake. But and then you're like, oh,
I
but
want to add peanut butter or something or another.
but maybe I'll take the sugar cookie recipe and add peanut butter. That's exactly what I did with my glazes. So I had one base, and it was everything above the line. So if you go home and you look at your glaze recipes, if you go home and look at your glaze recipes, you'll see that there's always a line after, and that everything that adds up above the line adds up to 100, and everything below that is going to be an addition to your 100%. So usually below the line is your stain, if you're going to use a stain. And so I would just kind of sub out stains. I ended up finding a recipe that I really enjoyed, and
is she gonna say what it is?
I know. Is she gonna say what it is? I'll tell you what it is. It's June Perry Red. And I found that recipe and I really liked it. It works really well. And then one day I was mixing it up, and it happened that my tin that I was using inside the recipe fell behind the freezer, and I couldn't find it. And so...
Ooh. That's an expensive colorant.
$25, by the way, per
tin
pound.
Oxide, yeah.
I mean, back then it was $25. And I couldn't find it, and so I was like shit out of luck, and I needed the glaze. And so because this is who I am, I was like, well, let's try something else. And so I ended up putting in, let's see, I like to think of glaze chemistry kind of like art. So I know that yellow iron oxide is essentially yellow, but it turns up kind of a brown. And I also know that cobalt is blue. So,
yellow iron oxide? Is that different than yellow ochre?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I've never heard of yellow iron oxide.
So
I just learned something new.
Yeah, I've never actually seen it by itself, honestly. But I had some. I had some yellow iron oxide because I think it was in a different recipe. And so I ended up, I was like, well, if I do like the majority of yellow iron oxide and then add in cobalt, maybe it'll turn green. And so I took it, and that's what I did. And it was my green for the longest time. It was such a good green. And then I was like, okay, well, if that worked, then I can just take out the yellow iron oxide and do blue. And so then I had a blue.
Perfect.
And then I was like, well, that worked.
When you were testing these, did you do like a line blend with like 3 different percentages of those colors? Okay. No. So you knew kind of like what range of intensity.
I just guess.
I knew you didn't, but I figured I'd ask the question.
I just guessed. And then I was like, oh, well, maybe I could do that and then do it just with red. So then I did one with iron, and that's my copper brown. So I basically have one base for almost every single glaze that I have.
And that makes it nice because they fit well together. You know they're not going to step on each other's toes and like make it go crazy when you overlap them and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I started out with a completely different like amount of glazes, like a completely different makeup of glazes, I suppose. So that's kind of how I started glazing, and that's how I still glaze. I don't like to test glazes.
But your routine fits your personality too, because it makes it so easy for you to produce the same thing. You're just like, I'm just going to mix up 10,000 grams of this base, and it could go to any color I want.
Yeah, exactly.
As long as I have the colorant, and like that's going to save you money in the long term, and then
right.
As long as you
and
have
it
the
also
colorant,
helps
so
with like food safety and stuff like that. I never really have I still test everything that comes out that's new, but I never really have a question of whether it's food safe or not. So That's really convenient.
Nice. Is it my turn?
Yes. It's your turn. Ryan, tell us about your glazing extravaganzas.
All right, so all throughout like learning in high school and studios and college and all that, everywhere that I went always had like buckets of 5-gallon glazes that were mixed by recipes and stuff. So I never really used glazes out of like Amico Potter's Choice, like cups of glazes, and I always did dipping. So
that is something we have in common. Yes.
Yeah. So I would say it's a lot of what you're exposed to. So I think just for those studios, like it's so much more cost effective to just mix up glazes and, hey, these are our glazes. Like this is what you can use. And I was always making a lot of test tiles and just, I was trying to figure out the good combinations of, I know what the single glazes look like because you all look at the grid of the matrix on the wall that has the, the single dip with this color and the second dip with this color. And you look at like how they're overlapped and, the studios that have that, you can see that kind of stuff. So you know what to expect. But I was like, all right, well, let's see what these two look like together or whatnot. So I was always kind of intrigued with making test tiles and overlapping glazes and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I was exposed to early on. And then when I was in college and stuff, we did have to mix up our own glazes in a primitive firing class where we had to basically just pick 3 ingredients and do a line blend of these 3 ingredients with different intensities of like however much of each one of them. So you can kind of see the basics of a glaze. So you can see like, what produces a really, really matte glaze that doesn't reach the melting point. And then the very other end of that spectrum, which one has too much of that material that melts a whole lot. I don't really remember all of that chemistry of those things, but it was showing us the science of like 3 basic components and then you put them together in a certain ratio. And then you get a glaze that's, glossy, it doesn't craze, it doesn't run and stuff like that. So we learned some of that and then we took out and split out from there and like picked that one. And then we did another blend of like that base, like Becca's saying, and then you added colorants to it to see what interesting colors you can get. So that's kind of like the extent of the like experimenting I was doing with glazes. That was just part of the class. I didn't really enjoy doing all that from the very start all the time. Like with all these glaze recipes that are out there nowadays, I don't think it's really worth doing that unless you're trying to go for something super unique that, is totally you. But that's too much work for me to want to do all that for a gamut of 6 or 8 glazes or whatever. And then you got a lot more risk with like food safety and all that kind of stuff too. So
yeah,
that's kind of what I was exposed to a lot. And then when I graduated, I was getting my studio equipment and materials and kilns and wheels and stuff. So a lot of the glazes that I use today have been inherited from the person I got my wheel from. So she had a set of maybe 6 glazes. So my bone glaze was from her, floating blues from her. I had a raspberry glaze that was from her.
Where is that?
I don't use it because it's in a paint can. I've tried to reproduce it, but I haven't been able to get another raspberry glaze that comes out consistent like it because it's an oxidation fire. The ones that I've done from John Britt's book, I have not been able to get like a cranberry or raspberry red.
Why didn't you ask me? I have a cranberry.
Oh, I don't know. I don't really. I don't know. I was only using it for lining pots. The only combination that I liked it with was really like the raspberry inside with floating blue outside. So it was like pretty dark, but kind of like that. But it's not really my favorite. So, but I got maybe like 5 glazes from her. I think I got like a shiny blue and then like a really, really shiny, like bright white. And those were like, okay, we'll toss those out. Like, I don't really like the shades of those.
What? You got a shiny bright white?
Yeah.
That's so good for dishware. I'm just saying. I
just don't like it. I think it's boring.
Oh, man. White's sexy.
It's boring.
Sexy.
Okay, so so a lot of that I inherited from her, and also the same with like the clay. Like the the stoneware clay that I started with, standard 182 clay. She just gave me a whole bunch of it, and I probably had 500 pounds of it that she gave me. Like, I just kind of inherited a lot of stuff when I bought that equipment, and that's kind of what I rolled with. So,
Isn't that
I didn't
how
have
it
to go
always
through
works?
Yeah, I didn't have to go through that process of finding clay bodies and finding glaze recipes. But I did do some experimenting from here, which this might be the useful part that's not just inherited to me, I guess. So I was using Pinterest a lot at that time to like look at look at glaze recipes. So if you look on Pinterest, you can just look up like cone 6 oxidation glazes or something like that, and you'll find a lot of like cool test styles of glazes.
Oh, and glazy.org, is that right? Glazy.org?
Yeah. Yeah, so glazy.org is probably the better resource now. But there's probably a lot of them from Glazy that are on Pinterest. Mm-hmm. So I was doing that to kind of like find colors that I liked. And then I probably mixed up 2 or 3 from Pinterest. I think that's where I got my Juicy Turquoise from. And then I got my Bergstrong Celadon, which is another green, which I don't really use now. I still have some in a bucket, but I need to phase it out because I had 2 greens already. So doing a lot of that kind of thing. And then since then, really getting that John Britt book, I was like, okay, I've got this gamut of glazes. I'm looking at what I want to add to it, to my, series of options. And I was like, you know what, I could use like a brown. I want some kind of like brown or amber Celadon or something like that. So I looked in the book and I found a Seltzer Tomoku that was in there. I mixed the base one up, and then it had some test tiles on the page that had like 2 variations of it too, with a little more magnesium dioxide, I think. So I was like, let me try a couple other tests with that, where it's got, a little more magnesium and then a lot more magnesium to see what it looked different. So it produced like a little more of the like yellow flecks in it. So I went with kind of like a middle of the road one that wasn't the basic Seltzer Tomoku. It's got a little bit more magnesium dioxide in it. So that's kind of the experimenting that I do nowadays, is like, okay, I pick one out of the book and then I might add a little bit more or a little bit less of something to see like if it adds a little bit of variation to it.
Yeah.
And then the only other difference is I have 2 other glazes that I use that are specifically from Kentucky Mudworks, the Satin Black and the Inferno Red. The Inferno Red I just started using like maybe 4 months ago or something.
Right.
So
I have one also that is from Tacoma Clay Art Center, that is their Raven. It's the Satin Black, because I've seen all of my friends who go through the Satin Black debacle and like making it food safe and all that stuff, and I just don't want to mess with that. I just don't.
Yeah. We had a Satin Black at NKU that we used, and I got that recipe, but the ingredients didn't really match with a lot of the ones that I already was using. So I was like, I don't really want to buy a whole bunch of ingredients, because a good glaze for me is like 6 ingredients maybe, and it's a lot of the same things. It's EPK and feldspars and Fritz and stuff like that. It's pretty simple, but this one had a lot of extra stuff that I don't have in the normal glazes that I mix up. So
also,
that was a factor for me. I didn't want to have a ton of extra stuff.
Also, I should mention also, I don't know if we did mention, but there's absolutely 100% no problem with buying glazes, in my personal and unprofessional opinion.
And we'll kind of talk about here in a bit about prices and stuff too, because
he went away, so I kept talking.
We'll talk a little bit about prices and where, the differences in the cost. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I've got you now. So wait, say that again. The differences in the cost.
So we'll talk here about like differences in the prices. Like, I can give you an actual cost for my glazes I mix up myself, and then compare that with a glaze that I buy from Kentucky Mudworks and how much that costs. Yeah,
if you have no problem paying the price, there's nothing wrong with using them. I guess that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, we all pick the sides of clay that we want to get really invested in. And some people have no interest in making their own glazes. And that is totally okay. If you don't claim to be a master potter, then why should you have to do everything that a master potter does? Which is another talk all in itself. I'm going to cough. So you say something.
Okay, so just for reference, you obviously don't have to be to this state. Like, Becca and I have grown over the years. We're buying more ingredients in bulk, so we're getting a better understanding of
Right.
like how much our glazes are costing us. I've got certain ingredients that I'm increasing to where I'm getting 50 pound bags of nephthalene cyanide and like EPK and
Right.
custard feldspar and stuff like that. So I'm driving the cost down over time because I'm comfortable with these glazes. I'm going to use them for a long time. So, you may not be at this state. Like, I started doing this because I was geeking out on the math and the spreadsheet side of it. So,
And I started doing it because I had no idea there was any other option.
So, well, this was like an after the fact. I didn't know how much my glazes cost until the last like year.
Yeah.
When I did a little experiment. So, I'll give you the number that I pay for like a batch of my Kentucky Mudworks glaze. So my Inferno Red, if I buy that from Mudworks, I want to say the last time I bought it, it was like 25% off, and it was like $76 for a 10-pound bag of dry.
That's insane.
So if I were to multiply that by 2, because usually my batches I mix up are 20 pounds, and that's about 4 gallons-ish. So if we double that, was that 152? So $152 is what I'm comparing to. And if I take, let's go with my tried and true, like Floating Blue. That one, with the ingredients that I buy, costs me less than $30 for a 5-gallon bucket of glaze.
Yeah.
So obviously there's more money factored in than just $30 because I spent a lot of time to like, you got to go buy the dry material. You've got to mix it yourself.
You got to make sure it's right.
Price that yeah.
Make sure you didn't put cobalt in instead of copper, which I've done.
Right. I mean, part of that money is probably like storing it. Like all that kind of stuff is factored into Kentucky Mudworks when they're pricing out a glaze. Like they got to pay the people to mix it. They got to pay for the storage to house all the ingredients and all that stuff. So, yeah, that kind of gives you a reference. So I would say if you're mixing your own glazes, you're probably going to be saving money in the long term.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it's also like at this state, this year I've been having, an assistant in the last 2 years mix my glazes for me. So I pay them, between $10 and $12 an hour to mix up a glaze. And they usually get a glaze mixed up for me, weigh all the materials out, mix it, sieve it twice in like an hour and a half, maybe an hour.
I don't sieve mine twice.
I do.
Do you think it helps?
I don't know. I've just always done that. Obviously, you can't sieve it twice if you're like testing out 100 grams.
I don't even sieve it if I'm testing out 100 grams.
Yeah, you can't really sieve that small.
I mean, you can. I have a little siever. It's a tiny one. I used to, and then I was like, screw this.
It's
like,
not
there's
really
a
worth
few,
it.
like my white, I have to sieve out. There's a few that I sieve out, but man. Oh, also, pro tip. I have a few pro tips for when you start getting involved in glazes. Pro tip number 1. Buy dollar store toilet brush cleaners to mix your glazes.
Yes.
So nice. So handy.
To stir them, you mean?
Huh?
To stir them?
Yeah, to stir them.
Yeah.
Did I say store?
You said to mix your glazes.
Oh, yeah, to like
I was
stir
just
them.
thinking like, when we were saying mixing, I was thinking from raw materials.
Oh, pro tip number 2, and I feel like I have to say this. Wear a mask. Protect yourself.
Wear a respirator when you're dealing with dry materials and powders.
Not when you're dealing with the wet stuff. That's fine. Pro tip number 3. Really consider the boxes and the containers that you want your glazes to be in. Because I fire in 5-gallon batches. I think, though, I'm about to up them to 10-gallon batches. And I've found over the years, I didn't cover mine at all when I was growing up in the clay world, when I was like beginning. But now we cover them up every single day, and it really, 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 really helps with buildup on the sides.
Cover them up? You're saying you never like put a lid on your glazes? Your 5-gallon bucket glazes?
I would always leave them open. I use them every day.
Oh. You didn't even, like, throw a lid on top and not snap it. You just left them open. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have lids. And that's also how
Oh.
Tidbit fell in the glaze once while she was trying to get in the house.
Oh, no. I didn't hear that story.
Yeah. I started covering them. I did start covering them, though, when they were outside because I would get leaves.
Oh, yeah. That'll happen.
Oh, yeah. So one time, here's a fun Tidbit story. Tidbit's my black cat. That wasn't my cat. She was actually my roommate's cat, but then I inherited her because he left. And he couldn't take her. Well, he couldn't find her because she hid behind the dryer. Anyway, we used to have my glazing studio used to be on my front porch. I had 10 glazes, and they'd all be down. I had a huge bucket for my slop glaze, which is the glaze that is conducted of all the different glaze water that we have. And then I had a huge bucket for my white glaze. I had the same bucket for years. And the cat door to get into the house was through the window. I had to like put a cardboard piece there and they would just walk through the window and jump onto the couch. And it was over the white glaze. And so...
Oh, no.
And so I used to put a little, like a piece of wood on top of it so they could get in there. And I guess maybe one day I didn't put the piece of wood there or it was like off a little bit. And I came home and there was white paw prints all over the entire house, like totally, like in the kitchen, all over the couch, like up the stairs, like everywhere. And then I found Tidbit in the corner, and she was covered in white glaze, like black cat covered in white glaze, and she looked so sad. And so then I had to wash her off and everything, but it was the funniest thing in the whole world.
Oh, no.
It's probably why she's the way she is, actually. Because of the glazing incident.
Oh, gosh. You get so much flack. All right.
But I haven't had a cat fall in glaze since.
Have you started putting do you use 10-gallon buckets now for all of them?
Oh.
Or you're saying you still use 5 gallons for all of your buckets?
Hold on. He went away again. Okay, say it again.
You still use 5-gallon buckets for all your glazes, and you're shifting to 10-gallon ones now?
Yeah, I started using 5-gallon buckets, and I have lids for them. And then I found these square buckets in, I found square buckets in Lowe's that are 10 gallons. And they also don't have a hole where the lid attaches. You know how it always has the hooky thing on it? There's no hole. And I use a 10-gallon bucket for the Paint-A-Pot clear, and it's like, it's awesome. And so, I think I'm going to switch to the square ones if they are wide enough to fit planters in. Because right now the 10-gallon buckets are just wide, or 5-gallon buckets are just wide enough to fit planters in them. They need to be at least that wide. But the length is really nice for plates. Like, because you can stick the whole plate in. You can't stick a 10-inch plate into a 5-gallon bucket. It's impossible. Mm-hmm. You have to pour it.
So you're saying it's actually square, though?
Yeah.
It's just like a round 5-gallon bucket, but it's
rectangle.
It's rectangle. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of my glazes now are 5-gallon buckets. I did upgrade 2 of them to 10-gallon like trash cans.
Yeah.
That's what you should look for. If you're looking for bigger buckets, look for 10-gallon trash can. You're not going to find like
I disagree.
10-gallon bucket.
You will.
It's not easy.
Oh, yeah.
Really? You just type in 10-gallon bucket?
No. It's a 10... Okay, sorry. I lied. It's a 10-gallon Rubbermaid. I found the Craftsman has a 10-gallon Rubbermaid container. It's black with a red lid. They sell them at Lowe's. And it does... Okay. It's like all the way up, it's 10 gallons. I used it for my mop, and it's awesome.
Cool. See, I asked for 10-gallon trash cans for Christmas last year, so I got 2 of those for Christmas.
Your wife's
my
probably
mother and father-in-law got me trash cans for Christmas.
Okay, you're... Oh my gosh, that's funny.
That's one of those where they feel guilty. They're like, we're just getting you trash cans? Like, I'm like, no, I'm going to appreciate these. Like, I'm going to use them.
I think the most ideal container is a 10-gallon horse trough, personally.
Do they have lids for those, though?
No, but I use a big bat. But, they don't have lids. You'd have to get, like, a piece of wood and use that. But, that's what I have for my white, because I use white more than any other glaze. And, Man, it's like the perfect container.
Ooh, I'll give you a pro tip for finding other containers. So I just got a whole stack of like 1 gallon buckets.
Yeah.
Some with lids, some without. And then I got some that were 3 and like 5 gallon buckets with and without lids. Reach out to a local bakery because they probably have some. And just tell them that you're like a local artist or hobby artist and you use them for mixing your glaze materials. They're probably not going to know what you're talking about, but you can just say you're a local artist.
Honestly, any restaurant.
Offer to buy them off of them. I mean, just compare it to like Lowe's. If you go to Lowe's, you can buy a 5 gallon bucket brand new for like $2, maybe $3 with a lid. Maybe $3.50 with a lid. $4. So just be like, hey, I'm looking for some buckets. Do you have any buckets I can buy off you for cheap or something?
Don't offer to buy them. Like, don't be that person.
No, you can say you're an artist and say, like, do you have any to sell? Or else you seem like you're looking for free stuff. But, I mean,
you are looking for free stuff.
I mean, you can do it that way. See if it works. Or you can offer money and say, do you have any to spare? Or something like that.
Tell them that you'll wash their dishes, like, one night. You'll, like, wash their dishes for them.
Or you can just get a batch of, like, 40 buckets or 15 buckets for, like, $20. Like,
yeah.
So, the one I got it from, he actually had a daughter that went to the school that I went to. So he was like, "Oh, my daughter's in art there or whatever." So I was like, "How much do I owe you?" And he's like, "Oh, you can have these."
Yeah.
So he just ended up giving to me.
They like just put them out in the alley anyway. I have tons of friends at restaurants, and the pizza store always has their 3 gallon buckets, and I think they're from
mayonnaise or probably like sauce or something. I would
guess.
Yeah,
mayonnaise or sauce. Yeah. I can't remember. And then the place next door, they have them too. They're square buckets and they're awesome. The square buckets, and they use them. Theirs are for sure mayonnaise. I get a sauerkraut bucket from my friend who has a deli. That smells bad if you leave it in your car too long. But it goes away.
The deli ones, I've got some pickle ones before.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's so many free buckets out there that restaurants don't want, that they just end up tossing. Like the Mexican grocery store always has stacks of buckets. And am I supposed to say I might have I was supposed to say it's the Hispanic food store. I apologize if I offended anybody just now. But
so
anyway.
And also one thing you should consider, so it's not bad to get like 1 gallon buckets, especially when you're learning your glazes. Like I want to say Kurt Hammerly probably uses 1 gallon buckets exclusively because he has like 20 glazes.
Oh my God, so many.
So, yeah, those are good. Consider the bottom of the bucket, because if you use like a cat litter container that's got the little ridges and stuff, like just think of how you're going to mix that up, because the glaze, when it's solid, it's going to settle into those crevices. So keep that in mind when you choose buckets for long term, because if you can't mix all that raw material up into the bucket, it's just going to coat itself down there, and it might change the look of what the glaze ends up looking like. So consider that too.
Yeah.
When you're choosing buckets.
Totally. Buckets are a huge thing in a potter's world.
Yeah.
But try and get free ones if you can. I always get the ones from, I think that the reason I've always done 5 gallons, because when I started doing pottery, I worked at Sherwin-Williams, so getting a 5 gallon bucket was no problem at all. So
right.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else with glazing stuff? This went on for this. We're already at like 49 minutes.
I know.
This is crazy.
Ryan was like, "It's only going to take like a half an hour." I'm like, "Bullshit."
What else as you're learning and stuff? I like every time I mix a batch of glaze, always have test towels on hand. Like dip a couple test towels in there just to test it out before you, do a firing, before you glaze 25 pots with this glaze. If you want. Becca probably doesn't do that.
I'm like looking at him like, I've never done that. I actually have done that a few times, thankfully. On very new glazes. Like if it's a glaze that I mix every couple weeks, like if it's my red, then I won't do a tester of it. But if it's like a brand new glaze, I'll do a test first and then I'll put it into production. And I'm so glad we've done
Yeah.
it because I've had a purple go totally south on me. But
So maybe we should talk about how do you go about mixing your glazes? Yours is going to be very quick or maybe I'll talk about how I mix my glazes process wise, and then you can tell me how you do yours. So, I have everything weighed out dry, put it all into a bucket, mix it up so that it's not like one ingredient on top of the other on top of the other. The bucket that I'm going to eventually put it into, I weigh out 20 pounds of water. And I usually do 20 pounds of water to 20 pounds of glaze. I add the dry material to the water, stir it up, stir it up, stir it up, stir it up until all the dry is in there, and then I put it through a sieve twice.
we're very similar.
And then I test tile it. I didn't know if you only sieve it once, but I didn't know if I figured you probably put the dry to the water on top of the water, but I wasn't sure.
Wait, you put the water on top of the dry?
No, I add the dry to the water. If I've done it the other way, so
I know,
if people
I was
do
the
it
one
the
that
other
told
way,
you that
why
you were
would
doing it wrong.
Yeah. What's the difference in the two, and why would you say to do it our way?
Okay, well, the only reason that I do dry to water, which, P.S., most people are going to tell you to do water to dry because it creates less dust. I would beg to differ. I think that it creates dust regardless. But I do dry to water because it'll, and I don't like stir it up when it's at the top. I let it sink to the bottom, because if you're doing dry to water, then every single bit gets wet. And keep in mind, I didn't learn how to mix glazes from anybody in particular, so like this could be completely wrong, but it's the way both of us do it. So
I wouldn't do this with a small like test batch. That's not going to work as well. You're kind of going for consistency when you're testing it out. You're trying to figure out the right thickness of the glaze and stuff like that.
But I definitely do not measure my water because I wouldn't even know where to start with that. So I just fill it up about over half, and then I add the dry to the water. I let it sink down, just like if you were gonna make plaster of Paris like molds, and then mix it up. I've done it the other way where you put the water in the dry, and it's so hard to mix it. It's like you have to put your mixer, because we use electric mixers on a drill. You have to like put your mixer all the way in there, and then you got like clumps, and it's impossible. Right. It's impossible. Like, I don't know how people do that, honestly.
Just think of, if you want to think of it like when you put water on top of it, there's water pressure pushing down on the dry. So the only way for the water to
get down there,
like integrate with it, has to have air that displaces, so that the water can dive down into the dry, and then disperse. It won't just naturally, get absorbed vertically down the bucket. So, for us, that's the easiest way to do it. I don't know how long it would actually take for the water to just soak into the dry.
It would die. It would like become a rock before it did that.
It would take forever, right? So,
yeah, that's why I prefer to put the dry on the wet, and also, like I said, I like to let it sink in first so that there is a significantly less dust.
So you kind of dump on maybe.
I fan it
a measuring cup worth.
Yeah.
At a time, and then it kind of like is like a little iceberg, and then it just kind of disintegrates and kind of sinks down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then do you just have a paint mixer there with you on a drill that you're stirring as it dives down? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to get going with
One scoop at a time, and I scoop and stir all at the same time, usually. I mean,
and if you have a second set of hands that's willing to help you, and you have 2 respirators, then have somebody dump some of the, bag or bucket of dry as you're stirring, and it'll kind of integrate as you stir.
Yep. I've heard of people having like fans on their glazing tables, and it like sucks up all of the like chemicals and stuff. I don't have that. I do have my glazing area in a completely different section though. Kind of on purpose. Just kind of.
I crank my like air purifier when I'm mixing glazes and stuff so that it, filters out the dust. Right. But yeah, you kind of get better over time. I don't do anything with specific gravity. I know you don't.
Definitely
You can get one of those
don't.
hydrometers.
I don't even weigh
and
out. I
do
don't
all
even
that
like
stuff.
weigh out my water.
Yeah. And the way that I weigh out my water, I have one of those kitchen scale, like those old kitchen scales that is like, it's got the nice big, like 8-inch, dial, and then you have the big square top to it. So I just put the bucket on there. I kind of tear out the bucket and then just dump water on it for 20 pounds worth. You can figure out the math for like ounces. 16 ounces is 1 pound of water. So
yeah,
you could just multiply that by how much you need. So if you want to do that route, or you can just guesstimate it once you mix your glaze a lot. And yeah. I keep all of my glazes are in a spreadsheet. I just have one spreadsheet with one tab per glaze.
I think I have that now too.
It does all the calculating for me. So I built all that out, and then, I changed the total number. So if I don't want 10,000 grams, I want, a 500 gram, I can change that. And then all the math will figure itself out, and it'll give me the exact numbers based on the percentages. That's easy. So
mine's not like that.
If you want, I can, if you want, I can share that with you. You just email me at ryandurbinceramics@gmail.com, and I'll send that to you.
Yeah, I am not that. I mean, I honestly, like, I have the computer program and I printed it out, but the only reason I put it in the computer was because you yelled at me and told me, what if your house burns down? And then I'd be shit out of luck on the glazes. But I wouldn't because I already know the base. But yeah, so I still really just write things in a book, I'm gonna be honest.
I mean, I still write things down. Like when I'm having my assistant mix it up, I'll still write like, okay, this is the glaze, this is 10,000 grams, and this is how many of each ingredient, so they can check things off a list. Because
I print it out and have a checkbox. But then, when we made our aqua, I like wrote on the bottom, and so then I have to flip through, and then they're like, wait, is this the right aqua? It's a total mess. It's like my like somebody was mixing glazes, and she was like, wait, is this it or is this it? And I'm like, I don't know. And then like sometimes when I run out of material, like I ran out of black stain once for my black glaze, and so then I just put less in, and I was like, we'll see what happens. And that turned into my galaxy blue. And then when I did that, I documented it, but I didn't put any words. I just wrote 218 like above the number. And she's like, so how much do I put in? And I'm like, see, that's the number. I'm so bad.
Jeez. That's funny.
I've messed up so many 5-gallon batches of glaze.
Luckily, I have not really. But I mean, as new people are mixing it, like if I have a new assistant that mixes glaze, I'm definitely going to have them do a test tile just to double check that before I use it. I mean, usually you can tell from like the color of the glaze because you mix it up enough, you kind of know what color to expect the batch to look like. That's a good thing to eyeball. But there's have to be a ton of science to it if you want to science out and like get all specific gravity and measuring and getting everything exact. I mean, I measure my ingredients exact, but like the look and the thickness and the consistency of the glaze is just kind of from experience of like how thick it should be. And then as you use it, you're like, oh, well, this runs a lot, maybe I want to let it sit out for a day or so add
water.
That's the opposite. Maybe you want to add water to it instead of letting it set out. If it's too thin, you could just leave the lid off for a few hours and it'll evaporate some. So, yeah.
Okay, we should probably be done.
Yeah. Right at 60 minutes.
Right at an hour.
Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Bye, guys.
And we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Bye.
Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you want to follow me or Ryan, you can follow us on our Instagrams. My Instagram is 5 Lines Pottery Studio. It's the number 5. And his Instagram is at RD Ceramics. That's R as in Ryan, D as in Durbin, Ceramics. And we would love for you to follow us, but we would also love it if you gave us a review on whichever platform that you're listening on, and if you tell your friends. We really enjoy doing this, and we hope that we can do it some more and have some great conversations. Thanks!